Hey guys, Tim Trich here from the Ethernet Blueprint. Thanks for stopping by. So last week I introduced a product to you called Firewalla. Now this Firewalla is a really great device that has the capability to add a lot of security and visibility to your Unifi network, or really any network. But in addition to that, it also has some great parental control capabilities, which is how I've been using it for the last couple of years. Now, if you end up liking today's video, okay, before you look to go purchase, make sure you check out last week's video because its focus was the capabilities of the different Firewalla boxes out there, which plays a really important part in choosing one that's for you. So make sure you don't miss that. Also, truth be told, I do have an affiliate Firewalla link in the description, so if you feel charitable, please use that link to make your purchase. Everything you do helps out the channel, and I appreciate it greatly. Now, today's video is going to be about the setup and getting this thing online. I have a Firewalla Gold SE, and we're going to install this in my Unifi network in transparent bridge mode, which is going to add just a ton of capabilities to the Unifi network. I've read you guys' comments from the last video. I know a lot of you guys use it like this already, and so it just makes this video all the more exciting to show you guys what this thing's capability is. And then we're going to dive into the interface of it, and I'm going to show you around a little bit, focusing a lot on parental controls, because again, that's how I've used it in the past. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's jump into the setup of adding Firewalla to our network. Now, before we do that, I want to show you our starting point. This is where we're going to start. So your network might look a little bit different. This is my home network that we're going to be actually doing this on. We're going to do this live on my home network. Hopefully my kids don't get too mad I'm going to interrupt things. But I've given forewarning, so tough. All right, so we have our UDM Pro. Okay, so that's my main router gateway. It's also my camera gateway. So I am using it multi-purpose, just like a lot of you guys are. Okay, so but don't worry if you don't have a UDM Pro, or you have the UDM SE, or maybe you have a Cloud Gateway Max, or just the Cloud Gateway Ultra. All the stuff we're talking about will work with whatever gateway you're using. Okay, then I have that plugged into a 48 port Pro switch. Now, originally, I had these devices plugged in with a 10 gigabit DAC cable. Okay, awesome cable. The transceiver module part and the cable are like one piece. There's no separate pieces. In order to add a Firewalla to the mix, which uses standard Ethernet cabling and just has Ethernet ports, okay, I had to change that. Okay, I can't use the DAC cable with that sort of setup. So I elected to buy 10 gigabit Ethernet modules, SFP plus Ethernet modules, and just connect my UDM Pro to my switch using a standard Cat6 cable. You can see the black cable right there. And so we're still getting the same capabilities, but we're going to be using standard patch cables instead of the DAC cable. Now, there is no way to work a Firewalla in the way that we're doing it today using DAC. There just isn't. So we need patch cables. We need to be able to plug a patch cable in because we're going to add our Firewalla right in between these two devices. So we're going to jump her from here into the Firewalla, then out of the Firewalla into the switch. And as you can see, the Firewalla has Ethernet ports, so there's just no way to do that with DAC, okay? So we can't do it. But this is basically the setup that we're going to be setting up when we're done. All right, so one call out here before we get to going on the setup. I am using the Firewalla Gold SE. Now this device, if you watch my previous video, is rated to do its full protection at 2 gigabits per second, okay? It comes with two 2.5 gigabit physical LAN ports and two 1 gigabit LAN ports. Now ports 1 and port 4, which I mentioned earlier that we're going to be using today, are the 2.5 gigabit ports. However, I have 10 gigabit ports on my UDM Pro and my switch. Now there won't be any issue with plugging in a 2.5 gigabit port to a 10 gigabit port. That's not the issue. However, if I was running 10 gigabit traffic through my network, which I'm not, this would be introducing a potential bottleneck, both from a physical port standpoint and because it's going to be doing deep packet inspection. It's going to be looking at all the traffic that flows through my network between my router and my switch, and the max speed it can do that is 2 gigabits per second. So you have to understand what is really happening on your network. If I was running 10 gigabit, I would be introducing a potential bottleneck right now. Now we just do some general surfing at our house. We stream our TVs. We have some IoT devices. I do have a 10 gigabit port on my NAS, but I don't run that kind of traffic through it. I'm not doing anything on my NAS other than some simple file transfer. So for me personally, it's not a big deal. This is not going to slow me down. All right, so to get things started here, we're going to go ahead and get signed up. This is the Firewalla app. So I actually already have an account. So hopefully when it puts my email address in here, there, it brought me right in. So there might be a little bit more of a setup process if you've never logged in before, but because it recognized my email address, it brings me to this screen. This is the screen we want to be on when it is time to get started with this. Now, we need to get our Firewalla wired in line and ready to go. So let's go ahead and do that. Then we're going to go ahead and add this in here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the LAN port on my UDM and go into port 1 on the Firewalla. So we're jumping from the switch into port 1, and then I'm going to go from my LAN port on my router into port 4 on the Firewalla. Okay. Now, just so you guys know, I have this kind of sitting up in my rack. There is a little QR code that we're going to need to get to here for the setup. So just kind of understand that if you guys are putting yours, installing it before you get it set up. So let's go ahead. Now that it's in there, let's go ahead and get things going. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add New. We're going to choose Firewalla Gold. We're going to, it's just basically saying power on the Firewalla. We've already done that. I already had mine plugged in, fully booted up to help eliminate some of the downtime. So we'll say next, and it is going to go out and look for our Firewalla on the network. This is, according to the top, it says it can take up to 4 minutes to do that. You can see it found ours. So now we're going to go ahead and scan our QR code. So I'm going to hit next to bring up our scanner. And we're just going to bring it in there. Okay, so set up the Firewalla. We can restore from a backup, which is really nice. If you ever have to reset this thing, you can do backups and restores from them, which is nice. But we're going to set this thing up as new. Here's our two choices. Now, if you did watch last week's video, you'll notice that in the directions on the Firewalla website, it walks you through these steps. If you choose yes, set up a router, it takes you to that part. If you say no, then it takes you to that part. It walks you through this process. So I'm going to say no because we are not setting this up as a router. We're going to put this in transparent bridge mode. So we're going to say no. And then it's going to give us two choices, the simple DHCP mode, which I've talked about again last week, and bridge mode. So we're going to choose bridge mode. And here it's telling us to connect it to our router. So our LAN port of our router goes into port 4. We've done that. And now we're going to do the setup. Now this can take a little bit, so I'm just going to let it run, and then I'll come back and start talking when it's done. One thing I wanted to say, before you proceed to what we're going to do next, make sure all your equipment is working. At this stage of the game, your network should be entirely functional. Your firewalls rules are working. All your clients are online. All your Unifi devices are online. Your cameras should be talking. You should do a little check right now to make sure all that's working before we add a security device in between, and then you don't know what's causing the issue and maybe forcing yourself to start over. It's a good checkpoint just to make sure everything's working. Now, we haven't done anything on the Firewalla. Matter of fact, we are still at the setup screen, which we're going to get to next. But as it stands today, if I didn't do any other things on my network, it was working just as it was before I added the Firewalla, and now we're going to add some additional steps. So I just wanted to call that out there, guys. It's worth noting, and I hope your setup is going good and this helps you out. All right, so let's get into the interface of this. I'm going to give you a little brief tour. We're going to talk through a couple things that I think are very important. All right, so this is the main screen. You can see network performance. It's got a nice little meter up there. If your internet goes down, you'll see some red sections where the network went down. You can actually click on that and it'll actually tell you about your network performance, recent events. You can do an internet speed test. You can test internet quality. There's a lot of really nice little features just in the one little click of a button as it's pertaining to your network performance. Now mine's thinking right now, so I'm going to not worry about that. But just know that you can go around and play around with that a little bit. All right, so then you got your graph. This is total amount of data upload and download, and it'll break it out between lines. Now, I don't have anything happening on the network, which I'm going to explain here in just a second. Then we have our devices, alarms, and rules. So as we click on devices, you can see we have some devices listed here. Now, one thing I want to call out here, as we work the Firewalla in and we unplugged my switch and plugged the Firewalla in the middle, right? The native VLAN that all of my network equipment on is a management VLAN. So all of my network equipment actually sits on a management VLAN that hands out a 10.1.1.1 address or 1.x address, okay? So when we plugged my Firewalla in the mix, it was assigned one of those IP addresses and sits in my management network. Now this is great for me. This is where I want it to sit. That's how I like it. Now you guys might not have a management VLAN, so whatever the default that your network equipment was IP address gets, your Firewalla will get an address too. And if that's your main network where all your other clients and stuff are at, great, that's fine. There's no wrong answer here. Just, I want to call out why you can only see Ubiquiti equipment here and not all my 30 to 40 other devices I have in my house. All right, so the reason is because this thing pulled that IP address. Now, by default, before we go tweak some other settings, it can only see the equipment for the VLAN that it's sitting in, okay? That's just, it can't see the other VLANs yet. I have a camera VLAN, I have a main network VLAN, I have an IoT VLAN, I have a guest VLAN. I have multiple VLANs in my house, but those devices do not show up by default until we do one of the other steps, okay? So I just wanted to call that out. All right, so then down at the bottom of the interface, we have network. We're going to be in there shortly. We can scan certain things. This is to see open ports in the network and stuff like that. Users, we're going to talk about users because I think that's a very powerful tool for setting up your rules, especially for the parental controls. So we're going to come back to that. There's family protect, so I can turn those on. I can say that these group of devices are set for family protect, which basically gives you a more family network available for when they go out and surf the web and stuff like that. It'll block certain things just by default, make it more family friendly. You can turn on safe search, and there's a social hour, which basically means at a certain time of day, or you can just manually turn it on. These devices shut off and network-wise, and it basically allows you to gather as a family and actually have real face-to-face conversations. Kind of a cool feature built into it. All right, there's ad blocking, VPN. We probably won't talk much about VPN in this particular instance. Data usage, this is really cool. It can actually track the total amount of data that goes through your network. How many megabytes, how many terabytes of data goes through your network in a given period of time. And then it'll tell you how much data you're using each month or each day. And you can look that up. So if your ISP is telling you that you only get so much data each month, right? This will actually kind of help keep them honest. And it'll actually tell you how much data is going through your network, which is kind of cool. And if I check this monthly data plan button here, it'll actually allow me to choose when my bill is paid each month, and then that's when it'll start doing my tracking. So I can actually make it check during the period of time when my billing starts and stops with my ISP, and I just got to type that in, how much data I get each month, and it'll let me know when I'm getting close to going over my data. Really, really great tool for those pesky ISPs that limit your data. All right, there's ad blocking. We had talked about that. So there's some services in here, DNS over HTTPS, Unbound, some very specific services. We probably won't get into much of that. That's some more advanced things. And then if I hit more, there's more things we can turn on here, which we will get into some of those. Okay, so I wanted to do that. Now, for this next part, this is very, very important, guys. I want to call it out special. If you take nothing away else from this video and you're kind of going out of your own, listen to this part. It is imperative, especially if you want to use this as a parenting tool to help you control certain devices on the network. It's important that you name those devices, right? If you want to, you're going to be getting alerts. So-and-so's iPad tried to go to an adult website. Well, if it just says iPad and you have 5 iPads in your house, that's not going to really tell you anything, right? We want to go through and we want to name these things. Then with names, we can assign devices to users, we can assign devices to a kids group all at once and control them all at the same time. And then when you get alerts on these devices and these restrictions are in place, you'll know if your kids are trying to do something they're not supposed to. But naming them is very important. Now I'm going to show you how to quickly do that real fast, and then I'm going to go name these and then come back to the video and we're going to kind of get to the next part here. So if I go into a device, I can click on one. So 10.1.1.1 is my UDM Pro. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then you can see device name at the top. We'll go ahead and click on that. If I click in there, you can see a little X. And we're just going to call this UDM Pro. Okay, so that's my router. And I'll hit save. And once it's done saving, that device will be now named UDM Pro, and I can see it in there. And I'm going to go do that for all my devices. These are my access points. These are my switch. This is my other devices. I'm going to go do that real quick, and then we're going to get to the next section of this video. All right, guys, so as you can see, we have all our devices named, and we're ready to proceed. Now, the next step we want to do is to expand the capabilities or the visibility of what our Firewalla can see. So in order to do that, we're going to create some additional network bridges. We're actually going to bridge the gap, so to speak, on what this device can see. So we need to basically open up those networks inside the Firewalla. It's very, very simple to do. I'm going to show you how to do it next. All right, so we're going to hit the back button. We're going to go back to this main screen where you can see network here. And if I go in there, you'll see management network 10.1.1.252. That's the IP address this thing picked out. And we're just simply going to create another network bridge. When we go in here, I'm going to go ahead and give the bridge a name. This one is going to be my camera VLAN. Okay, so I'm just going to call it camera network. All right. DHCP basically means, do I want it to just be able to, pull an IP address from the camera network for it to be able to communicate on? I'm going to leave it on there. My camera VLAN is VLAN 10, so I need to make sure I put that in there. Hit done. And I don't have to do anything else. Now, I am going to turn off IPv6 because I don't use that in my network. You can see some of the other settings down there, but just know you don't have to do anything else. You just need to give it a name and type in the VLAN ID and hit save. So once we do that, it will now be able to start communicating with my camera VLAN, and those devices will be visible inside the device. So we're going to go ahead and let it finish its update configuration here, which just takes a couple minutes, and then we'll keep going. All right, so a couple things I want to highlight here. One, you're seeing some Firewalla notifications pop in. Okay, this thing is going to notify you like crazy during this process because by default, all your notifications are turned on. So if that bothers you, I'm sorry, but this thing is going to just notify the heck out of you. But now you can see we have 15 devices in here, and you can see they're all Ubiquiti. These are Ubiquiti cameras, and I would just go through and name those devices as the next portion of this video. Now, I'm not going to do that to keep things moving. I'm just going to go ahead and create our other bridges and do it all at once and just get everything to kind of pile in here at one time. And then we're going to focus on creating rules, the parental controls. We're not going to really worry about any of the camera stuff right now. There's not much there, but it is good data to look at. I was actually shocked at how much data my cameras communicate. They upload gigabits of data across the network from themselves to my NVR, which again, this isn't all going out to the internet. This is actually, some of this is just traffic going from the device to our router. Well, my router is also my NVR for cameras, and these things will just upload a ton of data to the NVR at one time as they're recording. It's really kind of cool to see. So I'm going to go ahead and add our other network bridges here real quick, get my other VLANs in, and then we'll kind of keep going with the video here. All right, guys, so just understand that as you start adding these networks in, like we just did, it may take a little bit of time for all the devices to pop in there. That process does take a little bit. It's not going to instantly pop in there. It's got to go scan those new IP subnets that it knows about, and it does it in certain intervals. So don't panic if stuff doesn't pop in right away. I promise it'll pop in there. And then it's pretty real time after that. It does a pretty good job letting you know right when devices join the network and stuff like that. So let's quickly look at the interface just real fast and see how it's changed since we've added these networks. So as we scroll down, you can see we have some live throughput, which is actually kind of really neat. You can actually see actual traffic happening on each of the VLANs that we added. So I have a camera network, guest network, my home network or main network, IoT, management. Now management isn't probably going to show us too much. No big deal there. There isn't a lot that happens on that communication itself. You can see we have 44 devices. This monthly data usage I'll probably turn off, but that was that thing I was showing you earlier. So this is basically, if I would have entered all my information from my ISP, it would say, here's how much you've used. You have 4 days left. And, you know, hey, you're doing great, or you're about to go over. So just know that that's why that's there. I'll probably end up turning that feature off because my Verizon ISP doesn't have any data limits. And then you can see we have 44 devices showing up in our list now, all of which, some of which have names, some of them say unknown, some of them just say Intel, Amazon, Ubiquiti, those are those cameras, but we can see the IP address. So if we know the IP address, we can identify these devices, okay? And you can click into them and see the MAC address. So if you can't see an IP, but you can see a MAC, you can actually click into those and see those. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we want these things named, and I want to show you a little trick on how you can do that. It's a little easier typing them on a computer than it is typing them all on your phone, although you can do it all on here. So let's go to the web interface real quick. So if we go down here, you can see I have my UDM Pro, all my clients are listed here, right? And I've named all of my clients, which is great. That's going to help us with this process. Now I got another tab open here, and I simply just typed my.firewalla.com, and it comes up with this QR page, or a QR code page. So let's go ahead and add that. So if I go up to my gear and I set open in desktop mode, I can scan my QR code, as you can see, and then basically allow me to sign in. As soon as I hit that, it signs me in on the desktop. Now, just know, guys, when this gets signed in, the desktop is limited. You can't do everything you can do on the app. This is really an app-driven product, okay? Most of everything you can do is on the app, whether you're at home or you're away. You can control this thing from anywhere, which is great. But they have been making a lot of improvements to the desktop interface. It used to barely show anything at all, and now it's getting a lot better. But one of the things you can do on our little sidebar over here, and I'll just expand this out so you guys can see, you got dashboard, you got your alarms, which is great. You can click through your alarms on here. Devices, so here's all of our list of devices, which we're going to use to rename. You can create groups, you can see rules, or create rules, so kind of neat, right? And then there's a target list. This is kind of a new thing, which I actually don't know a ton about this, so I'm not going to go into it. I don't want to tell you anything wrong about it. And then you can see your flows. Now you really can just see them and search them and see kind of where your traffic is going, but you can see just how specific these flows are. You can see what IP address they're talking to, where they're talking to in the country. You can really break this information down and see a lot of data. But as it pertains to devices, let's not get too off track here. I can come over here and I can actually name my devices. So I can sort these by IP address. We can grab one window and put it over here. We can take my other window and put it over here, also sorted by IP address. And let's get to the top here. Hopefully I can do that. Okay, so let's sort it by IP address. There we go. All right, so now we can actually kind of go through our list here and just rename these very, very quickly. So I can go over here, 48 port switch is done, AP is done, I named these already. All right, 2.1, all right, so remember we added the 2 subnet, which is my VLAN 2, so it can see my UDM Pro gateway. So this is actually UDM Pro, I'm gonna say VLAN 2 gateway. Right, so now I know. So my UDM Pro is going to show up in here multiple times, which is actually kind of neat. But I can just click this little icon here and change the name. This is my Canon printer. So we can do Canon printer. Okay, this is much faster to name things. So here you see one just says Apple. It's 2.34. Let's go over here to 2.34. That's my iPhone. So I can come in here and just change this to Tim's iPhone. All right, and you can see as we scroll down, this is much faster than clicking into each one individually on the app, going down to the name section, backing out of the name. You can just edit things very, very quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here, guys, and I'm going to pause the camera while I do it. We're going to get everything kind of ready to go, and then we're going to build some rules around this, which is the part I know you're excited for. But just don't think everything leading up to this is not important. This is a really important step, guys. You're going to want to make sure you do it. Making your rules without this part is going to suck. But we are going to talk about notifications, and then we're going to talk about setting up our rules as part of this video. Let's get going. Okay, so now that we have everything named, we're going to go ahead and drive on and get into the device control or parental control part of the video. Now, Firewalla has done a great job with this, and they give you a lot of options and a lot of different ways that you control your devices. I'm not going to presume that the way I have mine set up is the way that you're going to want to set things up yourself. So what my goal is with this part of the video is to just really show you the capabilities, show you kind of where things are at so you guys can get in there and set them up for your individual needs, your age group of children, or just the devices that you want to control. Now, there are basically three ways you can control devices. You can actually go into the individual device itself and control it that way. You can create device groups where maybe your kids are younger and you just create a kids group, and you can lump all their devices, add all those devices to that group, and then create rules that are enforced at the group level, and every device in that group will be enforced by those same rules. That makes it a lot easier if there's a lot of devices to do. And then there's user profiles. If you like the idea of setting time limits on apps or time limits that the kids can be online, you're going to want to use user profiles because that's a new feature that we all asked for many years, and Firewalla was able to deliver, and the way they did that was through user profiles. I'm going to show you all three. Don't worry about it, but I just wanted to call that out as we kind of get into this so you guys can be thinking about this as we're setting up the rules. So if you guys are ready to get started, let's go ahead and get going. All right, guys, so now we're on the main screen here. We're going to go into our device list here and kind of talk about some of these controls. We're going to go into devices. Now, the first thing I want to show you is just individual device control, okay? So I'm going to just go into one device here, and I'm going to just show you there's some individual controls that you can do. So we'll pick on cadence switch, for example. So we're going to click into cadence switch. Now, this screen is going to look very familiar as we go through in each of the different categories, but you can kind of see. So this is showing us activity and information based off of this individual device, okay? So you can see that his switch has been online. It's done, 8,000 flows in the last 24 hours. This is under the activity tab. If I go click into, here's the activities. It's been on Fortnite and Roblox. He's done those on his switch. If I go into flows, it actually kind of tells me a little bit more about the data. I can see the live throughput if he's on it right now. And then I can get down here and get into some of the controls that we can do. And we can actually create individual rules for this one device, right? So if you don't have a ton of devices, this might be the simplest way to do it, okay? So let's just say we want to get in here and we're going to just go set up some stuff for cadence switch. So I'm going to block adult content. So this is all porn sites, and we're just going to say always block. We don't want to make sure he can get into that. If I move over, I want to make sure safe search is always on. So when I click that, basically if he goes online, it's just going to provide safe links for him to be able to click on. I can also click on family. Now family is going to also help block some of the adult content or things, pulling up videos he's not supposed to see. It just kind of turns on like a family mode for his device, okay? If we go to the top set of rules, if Caden's being bad or whatever, I can go ahead and just click on block internet, and I can block for a block until a certain time limit. I can block for 1 hour, for 30 minutes, or I can just say always block and then go in and manually turn it back on when he's got his attitude together. So just know you can go in and individually block things. Now for the groups, this is much easier, right? I can go into the group and block internet, and it just kills the internet for everybody in that group or all the devices. Same thing on a user. If I go into a user, it'll be able to block internet for that all their devices at the same time with one click of a button. So this is just at the device level kind of thing. So you can actually go in and block gaming, you can block video, and you can block social individually too by clicking these for, again, certain periods of time or always or whatever. So if they're really young and they don't need any social media, right, you can just block social all the time, okay? If I click on more, the only one it wasn't showing us was ad block, which I have turned on, and then a DNS service is off. So I'm not going to worry about any of those. Those are controls I don't need to worry about. Okay, now if we scroll down a little bit, we get into more of the apps. So there's a YouTube, TikTok. Let me just click on that. You can kind of see them here. So these are the ones that are built into the app. So Discord, Disney, Facebook, Fortnite, blah, blah, blah. And you can set rules on all these. You can block them so they don't work at all. You can set time limits so they only get an hour of Netflix each day or whatever. So you can go in and really kind of lock in and tone down how you want to do that. And typically that's done with rules. You would set up an individual rule for each thing that you want to control. So let's go ahead and do that at the device level. So we're going to click back. I'm going to click on rules right here, okay? And I'm going to say add rules. The ones down here are already blocked as part of the Apple Private Relay is blocked as part of the family mode. DOH services block a part of family mode. VPN sites. So it already turned on some of these things based off of the fact that we put it in family mode, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and hit add rule. This is going to be a block rule most time. You can also see a time limit thing right there, okay? So we're going to go ahead and just set a target. So I'll click on that. Now, do you want this block rule to go in effect for an app, for a certain location, for an IP address, a certain domain, the internet in general, for all gaming sites, all social sites? So again, you could get pretty granular with these rules, and each kid might have 6, 7, 8, 9 rules applied to them, okay? So that's kind of neat. So let's just say we want to set a rule that says he can't get to Snapchat, okay? So we're going to block Snapchat always. Now I can add a little note down here that tells me what the rule's doing, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And I'm going to go ahead and say save. So this rule is only applied on his Switch. This is not applied on his cell phone. Okay, we're doing this at the device level. So this is kind of one of the reasons I don't like doing individual rules, is because you'd have to do all these individual rules on every single device. By grouping them together or creating user profiles, you really kind of get the best of both worlds, and you can kind of kill two birds with one stone, or whatever you want to say, right? So this is one way to do it. But there is one thing I do want to show you here in the individual devices that's really not part of parental controls, but I think is important, okay? Let's just say you guys are setting up some restrictions on your network and you want devices that you don't want to be monitored, okay? That's actually done at the individual device level too, or maybe you can create a group of devices, say, don't monitor these, you can do that. So I'm gonna show you that. So let's say you want your phone and your spouse's phone and your work laptops. You don't want to monitor those, okay? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So let's, again, individual circumstances. You can actually, if I didn't want to monitor Caden's Switch, let's just say I didn't want to monitor it anymore, I can go scroll down to the bottom below all the rules, and you can see where monitor is checked. So I can uncheck that. It's going to say turn off monitoring. This will disable monitoring service and all rules for this device. So if this gets checked, there's no rules. It bypasses everything. It's not going to look at any traffic. It's not going to look at anything. It basically just says this device has a free-for-all and kind of gets bypassed through the Firewalla device without getting checked. Okay, so I can say confirmed, and then I can basically, all rules are enforced. What it does though, it actually turns on this emergency access. So if you read that, it says emergency access suspends all rules and blocks your device from that blocks your device from accessing the internet. So it's just kind of turning everything off. So as you kind of go through your devices and you're grouping them in your mind, this might be a route you want to go to, where you don't want control, right? There's ones you do want to control and ones you don't want to control. If you don't want to know where your husband goes on his laptop when you're not around, you might want to turn off. I don't know. Every household's different. I don't judge here at Ethernet Blueprint, I promise you. But that might be something you might want to know how to do, so I wanted to make sure to include it. Now that's how to run things at the device level, okay? That's a brief overview. As we go through the other settings, you're going to notice that you get a similar screens. It's the same screen, but we're going to be applying those rules to multiple devices at one time in a couple different ways. So I'm going to just create some hypothetical situations that we'll create here in the app to show you guys, and then it'll be up to you to kind of take it from there. All right, so we'll go into device groups next. All right, so next we're going to cover device groups. Now, in the old days of Firewalla, this is really what we had to use, and so I've set up groups a lot of different times. And so what this basically gives you the ability to do is to group a bunch of devices together and then set your rules at the group level. Now, this is really, really great. You can set restrictions on, blocking certain apps from certain times of the day. You can block internet from certain times of the day. You can restrict all of your devices at the same time to be able to not be able to use Snapchat or whatever. So I'm going to show you a couple examples. We're going to kind of go in there. The screens will look a little similar to what we did, but we're going to be enforcing this not at the individual device level, but actually at a group of device level. So let's just go ahead and kind of create a scenario here. So I'm going to go into the app here. We're going to click on devices, and at the very top of devices, you'll see groups. Now keep in mind, depending on what you have set up top here, the groups bar has to be highlighted before you can see the word create group. So we're going to click on that. I'm just going to create one called kids for an example, and then we're going to choose add devices. Now I'm just going to go down and just choose my kids' devices. Okay, so we got Caden's stuff, which I took Caden's switch rules. I deleted those before we got to this part of the video. So those will not be enforced. All right, so now we've added those. Now it says when a device joins a group, all the previously device level rules will be removed and it will follow the rules applied to this group. So actually I didn't even have to delete those rules. They would have automatically been deleted by adding his switch to this group. So we're going to go ahead and say confirm. And now we have a group of devices that we can set rules on. Okay, so I'll go ahead and say save. And anything that we do in the rules section, in the blocking apps, into setting limitations on what things can open or can't open, is all going to be done on every device in this group. So, and keep in mind, you can create multiple groups. Maybe you got a younger couple kids and then maybe some teenagers, right? So you can create like a teenage group and a younger kid group and then set different rules or restrictions on each one how you see fit, right? You don't have to just create one group. You can create multiple groups, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, so we're going to go into the kids group. It's going to bring up a very familiar screen for us here and kind of show us what we can do. If I go into activities here, part of the tab, it's going to show me that all of the devices in this group have done a collaborative 6 hours and 14 minutes of doing things. And it gives you a nice little graph of each thing. I can click through those. Yesterday, kind of click through the week or whatever. If I click on the activities tab, it's going to open this up and expand a little bit. There's a lot of great data in here, but it's basically going to say, here's how much, your kids spend on each of these apps, right? Good parenting moment. And then if you scroll down, it's actually going to give you a timeline of which device was online, for how long, and what app they were using. So a lot of really great information in here that I think a lot of times when I'm telling people to, they want to get in and they want to get the rules set up right away. And I get that for the big things like blocking adult content. But before you set restrictions on certain apps or whatever, sometimes it's nice to just let it read the data for a while so you can go and kind of see what they're on before you set up these restrictions. So this is a great place to do that. Now just keep in mind, this is a collaborative between all my kids. I mean, one of my kids might be responsible for almost all of this, and the other two weren't online very much at all. So it just kind of depends, on certain things. So I'm going to go ahead and hit back. We'll go back here, and then basically we're down at the bottom here where we have those very familiar screens. We can block internet on all the devices at one time. So if I click that, it's going to say, how long do you want to block it for? Just like before, always block turns off the internet now. But I'm going to show you here in a minute, we can actually schedule when the internet works and when it doesn't work. And so that will kind of help in cases where kids like to get up in the middle of the night and play devices when they're not supposed to. So I'll show you that here in a second. We can block gaming if they're too young and there's literally, we don't want any social, then you can just go ahead and block social media sites right here, and it just takes care of it on all the devices. Video stuff is going to be like your YouTube. When you're watching videos on YouTube, that's seen as video content. Okay, so for my kids, I definitely want to make sure I'm always blocking adult content. My safe search is always on. I think that's important. And everything's on family, like family readiness stuff. Even if they are teenagers, they don't need to be going to crazy stuff. Okay, and then we can go down here into our app control and define certain apps. I don't want any of my kids to be able to use, I don't know, Netflix, for example. So I can just say always block Netflix, and that turns that on. Okay, now I'm going to show you a couple things in the rules area, some of the things I've set up in the past to hopefully get you guys started with a few things. So we're going to click on, we just went back a screen, we're still in the kids group. I'm going to click on rules. I'm going to go ahead and add a rule. All right. Now, most of the time when you're doing these rules, you're going to be adding block rules. Okay, you're going to block things either always or for a certain amount of time. So that's kind of the route I'm going to show you here. All right, so we're going to say block. We're going to choose a target, and we're going to say the internet, okay? So we're going to basically say we want to block the internet at a certain period of time. I'm just going to say to and from the internet. Doesn't really matter what you pick there, okay? Now, under schedule, we have it set to always. I don't want to block it always. I want to go in there, and I want to say every week, or I can pick certain days of the week. I can set one of these for weekends, and I can set different times for a different week. I just have to create a different rule, okay? So we'll actually do that here. So basically, every day from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., the internet will be blocked on every device in this group, okay? So we go ahead and hit that, and then hit save. Cool, right? So now we're going to go in and add another one, but this will be for the weekend. So we're going to go in, we're going to block, we're going to choose internet, to and from, always, every week, and I'm going to just turn on Sunday, turn off these days, and Saturday, okay? And we're going to say on the weekends, it's off from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Okay, maybe I got some early risers. So on the weekends, just Saturday and Sunday, you got a little bit longer time when the internet will work before it shuts off. So we'll go ahead and say done and save. And now we have these rules showing up in our list. Now, keep in mind, we can edit these at any time, right? Summer vacation, we don't want the internet to be limited in the summer vacation, so we can go in and either turn off that rule or delete that rule or whatever. So if I click in, let's say it's summer, and I click into weekdays, I can scroll all the way to the bottom. I can pause that rule, or I can just delete it, okay? And set up a new rule or whatever I want to do, or edit the times in that rule. Whatever it is that you want to do, just know that nothing's set in stone. You don't have to delete and start over. You can absolutely go in and just kind of edit things the way you want. So really, really great, kind of a cool deal. You could do the same thing for individual apps. So you could block, say, an app, Netflix, from, let's just say, on the kids group, and we'll just say on a schedule every week from, I don't know, we'll just say 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'm not going to set some stuff, but it can be an individual app rule like YouTube, or it can be the internet altogether. I mean, you can really kind of go crazy with this. So that's something to kind of think about as you're doing it. So groups are really, really powerful. It allows you to kind of do things all at once. Also, the last thing I'll show you, if you want control of this, of all your kids' devices, and not have to dive 4 levels deep in the app, you can see keep on the main screen. I'm going to hit add, and that takes clear back to the main screen. Now when I scroll down here, I have the kids section right there. It'll always be there. It's pinned there, so I can quickly get in there, or I can quickly hit block internet if my kids are acting up in one click just by opening up the app. So, get things set up the way you want. Tweak it, try it out, test it, right? Your test results may vary, right? I've just had really good luck with this, and I think these boxes, especially like a gold and transparent mode or one of the purples, or if you have this thing in router mode, which we'll talk in a later video, these things work really, really well, okay? So now we're going to talk about user profiles. I kind of saved the best for last. This is the way I like to have things set up. If you like time limits, this is the route you want to go. These user groups don't really allow you to use time limits, okay? The time limits, you need to use user profiles. I'm going to show you that here next. I think it's pretty cool. All right, guys, so now we're going to do my favorite of all three, and that is going to be the user profile setup. Now, this is new, but once it came out, I switched to it immediately. I just think it's a great way to kind of see what each of your individual children are doing online, how they spend their time, so you can have those conversations around it. And again, the ability to add time limits to certain apps is just really, really great. I love that. So let's go in and set up some user profiles, and I'll show you how it's done. All right, so instead of clicking on devices, this is not a device level rule or a device group. We're going to go into users, okay? And we're going to create a user. And I'm just going to choose Craze from scratch, but just understand, I think this bottom section here was for, all of us had all these these groups set up over the years, and then this came in. This allowed you to kind of convert a group into a user profile, which I thought was pretty cool. But we're just going to say create from scratch. We're going to give it a name. I'm just going to choose my child's name. We'll add her 2 devices and hit confirm. All right, and then hit save. Now, when this gets done, it's basically going to take a profile picture of how my daughter Ava spends her time online. It's going to paint that picture for you. You're going to get a lot of the same colorful graphs we've already seen in previous ones, but it's going to be specific to my daughter Ava, and it'll really kind of paint that picture for you. So if we click into Ava now, you can see we have 2 devices. If she gets an iPad or a school computer, we can just go in and add those devices to her profile. Very easily done, very easily adaptable. You can see that she spent a total of 1 hour and 10 minutes on apps today. If I click in activities, I can see what time she was online, what app she was on, and for how long, and just kind of paint that picture. You can look per week, per day. You can look at the flows, so you can see how much data she's actually sent across the network. Really kind of cool, right? Now, as we get down below, you'll see a lot of the same things we saw before. So we had, you know, we can block internet for Ava. If we click that, all of her devices will immediately shut off. We can set those same rules like we did in groups just a minute ago, where you can go in and set internet rules that say the internet works on her devices from this time to this time, and then that way ensures that she's not going to get up in the middle of the night and play things when she's not supposed to, or whatever. So again, you can do this however you want. All the same rules from before apply to Ava in this case. However, you can see we have time limits. So you can see we can add time limits, and that was not there previously. So I'm going to go ahead and hit time limit. We're going to choose an app. So let's just say YouTube. Everybody loves blocking YouTube. And we're going to set a limit that says Ava can be on it every day for 2 hours. Okay, and then I'm going to say done and save. So now you can see it added a little category down there that says Ava's YouTube, 2 hours left. She has been on YouTube for 7 minutes. Eventually it will factor in that 7 minutes into what she has left. It just doesn't do it instant when you add it. So it will take that into consideration too. But let's say she spent a lot of time on Instagram. You can see most of her time has been on Instagram. So we're going to go ahead and add a time limit on that too. Select the app. We'll choose Instagram. Right, we're going to say 2 hours. I don't want her over 2 hours, so we're going to do that and that. All right, so again, it will factor in that other time and be able to, so we can see Ava's stuff. Now, I do want to always block adult content in my Ava profile. I want safe search on in my Ava profile, and I want family protect on. These are my babies, right? I want to make sure they're safe. So you can turn on all those and let the Firewalla do its job to kind of help protect what websites are presented to them and whatnot. If I click into more, I can set up any of these other things in here, turn off gaming, turn off video, ad blocking, whatever I want to do, but on an Ava specific situation. And then I can come down here and I can add her to my main screen. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. And so now when I'm on my main screen here, right, this is my normal main screen. As I'm scrolling down, Ava will be pinned there at all times, and I can quickly get to her settings, her stuff, and look at what she's been doing very, very quickly, right? And so you could pin all of your individual children on your main screen, and then that way you just kind of have, at a quick view without clicking 3 levels deep, you could quickly get to things. Not that it's a lot of clicks. If you just click on users, all of your kids will be listed right there. So it really is kind of neat that you can do these things. Again, all the rules that we talked about in the last section will apply here. I can turn on the internet from certain times and block certain times. I can restrict access to gambling sites and just things like that. There's a lot of really individual rules that you can do for Ava or for that child. Treat them individually. You know, my Ava is 16, my youngest is 12, so we obviously don't treat them the same, right? One has more freedom than the other one does in a lot of cases. And so you can treat them as such with Firewalla. Again, with the no monthly fees, this is kind of a no-brainer. It just really gives you a ton of visibility so you can see what's going on and, in general, keep your network safer. So the next thing I want to talk about is the notifications, right? So notifications can go gangbusters. If you've watched the earlier part of the video, you saw every time we were adding network bridges and things like that, we were just getting bombarded with notifications. Well, we can dial that back a little bit. Now, as I'll get into it, I do recommend kind of leaving them on by default and kind of see what comes in and see what annoys you and what doesn't. This process is a little bit of an evolution learning process as you're first putting the Firewalla in place. However, if there's certain things that you want to shut off or certain things that's already annoyed you, we can do that, okay? So we are going to talk about notifications. There is one little trick that I want to show you here that's really, really cool. and it'll kind of help protect your network. It also will kind of help when your kids' friends come over to ensure that their devices aren't getting into something that they're not supposed to, and that is with new device quarantine. So let's go take a look at it. All right, so before we get into the all-important notifications part of the video, I do want to cover a couple things that I think are very, very important, and a little trick that I've had up my sleeve from setting up these boxes over time, okay? Now, the first thing I want you to know is that generally iPhones, iPads, Android phones, they kind of all fall in this category, where basically when they join a network, they have a security feature built into the settings of the device itself, has nothing to do with Firewalla, that basically randomizes their MAC address on the phone that forces the device to show up as a new device randomly. So what that means is that when I connect my iPhone to my network, it has a specific MAC address that is tied to the IP address. However, because of this feature that's built into mobile devices in general, once every couple weeks or once a week or whenever it is that Apple changes it, my phone will give itself a new MAC address, which means it'll be identified on my network as a completely new device. So all the rules I had set up for my phone and all the things I had set up won't apply anymore because it's now seen as a completely different device. And so you get notified, hey, you got a new device, iPhone just joined the network, and you're like, what the hell? My iPhone's been on the network. Well, it's because of this setting. So I'm going to show you where it's at. I generally recommend people turn it off on your kids' devices, on your devices, just because if you're using a device like Firewalla, it can make your life a little bit more painful. So let's go into settings. I'm going to show you where it's at. We'll go into settings here. All right, so if I go into my Wi-Fi network and then I click on the little I by my Wi-Fi, down here below, you can see private Wi-Fi address. Okay, that's what it's called in iPhone. It might be called something a little different in Android, but it's with the latest update, 18.1.1 or whatever, it's called private Wi-Fi address. If I click on that, you can see I have mine turned off. So I recommend just turning it off. I don't necessarily know how secure it makes your phone, but in general, I get what they're trying to do. Great for when you're in a coffee shop, sucks for when you're at your house. But you can also put it on fixed, where it still creates a private IP address or a private MAC address, but it's a fixed address and it just kind of stays. It's the rotating one down there below that kind of sucks, okay? So just make sure it's not on rotating. If you have it on fixed or off, this setting off, it will help with this. Now, if you do have it off, you're going to get the privacy warnings in your other screen saying you're not being super secure. Don't let it scare you guys. It's just basically saying you have this setting turned off. And I may get blown up in the comments saying, no, don't turn that off. You need it on for A, B, and C reasons. I'm just letting you know it could cause some potential issues for you in Firewalla because your iPhone will show up as a new device. And so all these rules you set up on your kids and their mobile devices, and then all of a sudden they're showing up as new devices 2 weeks later and you have to redo it all, okay? So I'm just letting you know the consequences of not messing with it. Just understand that, okay? So generally I recommend to turn it off. Now I do have a little trick up my sleeve that I've used in the past using the situation called new device quarantine. There's a feature in here called new device quarantine where any new device that joins the network, you can set rules on it. So this is great for when your kids' friends come over and they have their devices. You can actually make it so their devices can't get to adult content and stuff right out of the gate. You don't have to name them. You don't have to make them part of the group because they'll be in this device quarantine group, which is really, really cool. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Then we'll get into alerting. All right, so I'm going to get out of here. We'll go into our Firewalla screen here, and then I'm going to go down into the bottom sections where we can turn things on or off, okay? And you'll see, before it was disabled, but now you can see I have it enabled called New Device Quarantine. So you just toggle it on, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and apply it to all networks. So any device joins any one of my networks, it's going to get put in this device quarantine until I decide to do something with it, right? So it's basically creating a group called quarantine devices, and then we can set rules in those devices, okay? So I'm going to say any network, anytime I add a device, I have to deal with this. So remember that it's there, and make sure that alarm is turned on that a new device has joined the network. Will be kind of a reminder. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save, let it save here, and then we'll go in and I'll show you how to control this group, okay? This is a great little catch-all. Now, out the gate, if you don't do anything, when a device joins, the internet is blocked for that device. It cannot get to the internet at all until you move it into a group that has access to the internet. That's why it's called New Device Quarantine. So if I go into my devices, you can see I have a group called Quarantine with the internet turned off, okay? So I can click on that and you can say the internet block is on. So any device that gets put in this is gonna have the internet blocked. But we don't have to do that. We can actually turn that off and say always pause, okay? Now we can go in and say block adult content, always, family safe search, on, okay? Family on, right? I can restrict access to apps. It'll only apply devices in my quarantine. Just like when we were doing the group restriction with kids, we're doing the same thing with our quarantine. So I can make it so if they have a sleepover, they're not on YouTube all night just because homeboy's phone isn't part of our network. I can control his phone too, as long as he's on my Wi-Fi. So you can go in and add some app control, all sorts of things in here by using this new device quarantine. So when the friends come over, you don't have to worry about them getting into mischief on their phones too. Now, granted, all they need to do is turn off their Wi-Fi, so it's obviously not a perfect solution. However, if you say, hey guys, if you're on here, you need to be on our network. That's how we do things. That's how we enforce things, blah, blah, blah. You know, maybe it'll help kind of with that sort of thing. I don't know. But I just want to call it out. It's just one of the little tricks I've learned through the years is you can kind of manipulate. Nothing you have to do, but just definitely something that can add a little enhanced security to your network when, you know, friends come over. Okay, so let's get into notification, alarms, and finally wrap up this really long video, guys. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Lots to cover here, so I appreciate you working your way through it. So, on to notifications. All right, guys, last and least, notifications. Let's talk about it a little bit. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what they are. Again, in general, I recommend leaving them on. I know they'll drive you bonkers in the beginning, but just kind of understand the ones that are annoying, the ones that aren't really telling you anything, and then you can kind of tweak them accordingly. But here's how to do it. So as we go back to the app here, this is the main screen. You can see devices, alarms, and rules. I'm going to click on alarms. That's what we're talking about here, being notified. And then you can see in the top right corner, you'll see a little bell with a settings icon. Now I can go through and look at my alarms right here, look at the ones I want. I can sort by security alarms. I can sort by open port alarms. I can sort any way I want, new devices that came in, stuff like that. So I can sort them, search for certain devices, you know, kind of look to see what's happening on my network right now. But if I want to set some restrictions, I'm going to go into the settings gear. So when I click on that, here is where we set the alarms. And I'll just kind of show you how I have mine set, and maybe you guys can mimic it in the beginning. Now, in general, I have my alarm set to moderate. I like more than less, just in general with network security. So again, you can set that accordingly. I leave my security alarms on, but let me just talk about this screen. This is important. So if you say send alarm and notification, it means the phone will notify you. It'll put it in a log. So the alarm is that list of logs we were just in that I told you could filter the results. That's an alarm. Or you can mute it and it won't do anything, okay? If you don't want it showing up in the list, you just don't care. Like for me, for example, you'll see I have a lot of these muted because I'm not using VPN. I don't need alarms in clogging up my stuff for something I'm not using, okay? But it's your judgment call. As a safe bet, you don't have to mute anything. You could just set send alarm only or send alarm and notification, however you'd like to do it. So with my security alarms, generally, I want to know. If it blocks something or whatever, I want to know about it. So if there's malware, I want it to tell me. So I leave both of those on. Abnormal uploads, you'll find this one can be kind of an annoying one just because there's a lot of uploading happening, especially if you have like smart cameras that are uploading to Ring or Nest or whatever. You'll get a lot of alarms there. Even if you set it to low, I've just found it's easier to just send the alarm only and then check it every once in a while. But again, up to you. Open ports, I like to know if there's open ports, but I did say send alarm only. That generally don't run on that very often. Okay, so large upload, same thing. I was getting these with my cameras. So my cameras were uploading gigabits of data to my UDM Pro, which is also my NVR. And I was getting this camera has uploaded this much data, right? And you can set limitations on it. So you can go in and actually set limitations to say 100 meg, 500 meg, 1000 meg, 5000 meg, whatever, switch it. I think you have to do it in megabytes. But again, if you only want to know about really big uploads, excuse me, you can actually tweak this setting a little bit, which actually I really like. So, but for me, I just say send alarm only. I let it kind of do its thing. All right. New device. That's what we were just talking about. Anytime a new device joins the network, I like to know about it. I like to know when my friends or my kids' friends come over and they join their devices, I like to just kind of know what's going on. And as it stands right now, they'll all go into that new device quarantine we just talked about, okay? VPN, I shut off, but this is VPN activity. If you have VPNs on the network and you want to know when they're kicking on or kicking off, you can actually have alarms and be notified for it. Video activity is just that. YouTube, do you want to be notified every time your kids are on YouTube? Yeah, maybe. Just depends on the age of your kid, right? Maybe they're not on it very often. I would go nuts if I was notified to it all the time. Same with gaming. Now, porn activity, absolutely. I want to know if my kid tries to go to a site, what device it's on. I want to be known at that moment that it happened, right? It gives me a parenting opportunity to have with my child and go speak to them, not try and scare them, but just talk about the dangers of that kind of activity. So I like being notified on those, okay? This is device offline and device back online. So these are the individual devices that are connected to my network. Do I want to know when something disconnects or connects? This is great for if you have a device that you want to know when your kids are leaving, so you want to know when their phone disconnects from the network and maybe reconnects to the network. They're back home. It'll tell you that, hey, Ava's phone connected. She must be home from work. So that's an example of when you can use that one, but I typically don't. I have other ways of tracking that. Large bandwidth usage, again, I just kind of set to alarm only. If I want to see large bandwidth things or I think there's something happening on the network, I can usually find it and go look for it. VPN connection error, pretty self-explanatory. We don't use VPN, so I have that one to mute all. VPN connection restored, mute all. I don't have that. I probably will do some VPN videos here over the spring, but as of right now, I don't need it on. Now, the bottom one I really like, internet connectivity internet connectivity update. So this is going to let you know your Firewalla box, separate from Ubiquiti, will actually tell you when your internet goes down. This is great. I love to be notified from 2 different sources telling me my internet's down. So I have that one on, and to notify me, it'll also tell me when the internet has been restored, which is really, really great. So these are the alarms. Again, in the beginning, they go nuts, but as you use the device and it calms down, I went from, 140 alarms the first day to down to, maybe 25 a day or 5 a day, depending on how I want to be notified and stuff. So again, you guys can tweak these the way you like them. And I recommend doing it, but there's no harm in leaving them on by default. All right, guys, so I hope that's helpful. I hope this is a good overview, enough to get you started with Firewalla. I love the device. I think it's great. When I put the last week's video and I called it the Dream Team, it really is a match made in heaven. I love putting these two together. Now I'm going to play around with it a little bit. We're going to do some videos probably down the road with Firewalla in router mode and kind of talk through some of the firewall rules, how to do those, because we didn't do any of that in any of these videos because we're letting Ubiquiti handle all of our firewalls, all of our VLANs, all of the rules and stuff, right? But these Firewallas can do this as well. So, for some of you who don't want to splurge on a Unifi router and a Firewalla router, which I totally understand, we're going to talk some options down the road. Leave comments if that's something you want to see, of course, or if there's something I miss, and I'll try and get those down the road in a later video. But thank you for watching. Thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end. I hope you guys found it informative, and we will see you guys down the road in a future video.